Shalom everyone, and welcome again to our joint learning of Parashat Vayeshev, Transformation, Temptation, and Triumph. Hopefully, in these challenging times, we will all experience, with Hashem's help, triumphs, victory, and Be'ezrat Hashem, good news and Bsorot Tovot. Parashat Vayeshev, one of the major issues of Parashat Vayeshev is obviously Yosef, this biblical figure that is all encompassed with so much mystery. He is such a talented young man, but he is sometimes acting like a little child. And then he found himself in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, a slave. And then he rises into the ranks and he becomes the master of his house, being thrown to jail and then find himself again to be the king's assistant. And then the story of him trying to deal with the family dynamic with his brothers who sold him to Egypt and so forth. But today, I would like to call all of our attention to the following story. The Torah states in Bereshit, Perek Lametet, Pasuk Zayin, in Genesis chapter 39, verse 7, Vayi achar hadvarim ha'ele, and after these things, ותישא אשת אדוניו את עיניה אל יוסף. And Potiphar's wife raised her eyes and she saw Yosef. ותאמר, and she told him, שכבה עמי. I would like to be with you in an intimate way. When you look at this pasuk, you immediately need to ask yourself a few questions, and that's what we are going to do, and try to figure out what are our sages try to convey to us through this pasuk. Whenever you see a verse in the Torah that states, Vayi achar hadvarim ha'ele, and it happened after these things, the first question that comes to mind is, what things? What are we talking about? Are we talking about the story that just preceded the current story? Are we talking about something that took place maybe a few chapters before? What exactly are we talking about? Just as a side note, we mentioned this idea in Parashat Vayera when we talked about the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, that also began with Vayi achar hadvarim ha'ele. It happened after these things. So this is just like I would call it a trivia knowledge. Whenever you learn and you study the Tanakh, and you see a pasuk that says achar hadvarim ha'ele, after these things, ask yourself a question. What exactly are we talking about? And then the mefarshim, the commentators, will try to offer different opinions. So this is the first thing that we will need to what? To analyze and explore what exactly are the things. ותישא אשת אדוניו את עיניה אל יוסף. This is also an interesting detail. She raised her eyes to see Yosef. What does that mean? In Tanakh, in the Bible itself, whenever we say Vayisah et einav vayar, it means almost like spiritually. You lift your eyes, like what we say in Tehillim, that we say so many times because of what Israel is going through. We say, Esa einai el eharim. I will lift my eyes to the mountains. Meaning it's like more spiritual connotation rather than just, okay, I need to lift my eyes and to see someone who is a little taller than me. So that's the second issue that we will have with this pasuk. And the third issue is Vatomer Shichva imi. She is a very direct lady, and she basically says to Yosef, I would like to have intimate relationships with you. Why? Yosef is a slave. He came from the land of Canaan. Why would you want to be with him? So those three main questions, and we will have some more as we go forward, are basically the three pillars, on the three basic pillars of our shiur, of our session of today, to try to understand this pasuk, to try to understand the dynamic between Potiphar's wife and Yosef, and what exactly is going on here. Now let's put all those questions aside for a second, and let's see the next source. The Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah, which is an ancient Midrash that was composed in Eretz Israel, probably 5th or 6th century, picks on the pasuk Vayi achar hadvarim haele, the same pasuk that we spoke about. And the Midrash is going to try to tell us what is the definition of these things that we spoke about before. But before that, I would like to go to source number 3 in order to read some psukim from Mishlei, from Proverbs, Perek Zayin, chapter 7, and because this pasuk is basically the basis for the Midrash. So King Solomon in Proverbs, in Mishlei, says the following: Va'ere baptaim, and I will see among the ptaim. What is ptaim? So the Midrash will talk about it in a minute. Avina babanim, I will have an insight and understanding with the children, with the boys. Na'ar chasar lev. So when I look at the ptaim, that we don't know yet what it is, I will look at the boys and I will see among them a youth, a young boy who is chasar lev, who does not have a heart. Who is he talking about? What exactly going on in Shlomo, in King Solomon's mind? So we'll go back to the Midrash and take a look. Vayi achar hadvarim haele, and it happened after these things. Va'ere baptaim. The Midrash takes the pasuk from our Torah portion, Vayi achar hadvarim haele, and the Midrash is going to address the issue of what things. So the Midrash connects it to the pasuk in Mishlei, in Proverbs, and he says the following: Va'ere baptaim elu hashvatim. When King Solomon says that I looked at the ptaim are the tribes, other Yaakov's children, all the 11 of them. Amar Rabbi Levi, so Rabbi Levi, one of the Amoraim in the 3rd century, says, Be'arvia tzavchin leyemenuka panti, which means we call children who maybe are not that developed cognitively, or maybe they are still growing, we call them patya. So in Arabic, ptaim is children. Okay. Avina babanim, that's the second part of the verse. Avina babanim, I will try to gain insight into the children, and I found na'ar chasar lev, a young boy who basically has no heart. Who is that? Says the Midrash, Ze Yosef, chasar lev, שהיה אומר על אחיו לשון רע. יש חסר לב מזה? התמהה? This is an incredible Midrash. The Midrash is addressing a bit of a different question, but it addresses our question of what does it mean after these things. Says the Midrash, these things, look at the beginning of the Parsha. Yosef is a boy who does not have a heart. He is heartless. Why? Because he is bad-mouthing his brothers. He is bad-mouthing his siblings to Yaakov in order to basically portray them in a very negative way, in order to build his success based on their failures. This is called chasar lev. This is an amazing lesson that the Midrash is trying to convey to us. Basically, the Midrash is addressing two questions at once. You want to know what are these things? These things equal to Yosef bad-mouthing his siblings. But there is another question. You want to ask yourself why Yosef needs to go through these tribulations with Potiphar's wife, why he needs to be thrown to jail? Because he is heartless and he needs to gain his heart back. Saying lashon hara, bad-mouthing your siblings, you become chasar lev. This is, according to the Midrash, the background for this entire trial of temptation that Yosef needs to go through, and it also explains these things that began this story. And then the Midrash continues to give a drasha, to give an explanation to the other psukim in Mishlei from the same chapter. So in order to make it clear, I just want to go to source number 4, and we're going to read and translate a little bit this few psukim, few verses from that chapter. Ve'inei isha likrato, that continues with that person, with this boy who is chasar lev, who is heartless. It says, Ve'inei isha likrato. There is a woman who comes towards him. She's zona netzurat lev, and she's daring, she's aggressive. הומייה היא וסוררת בביתה, לא ישכנו רגליה. And she is a minister in her home, she is the boss, and פעם בחוץ, פעם ברחובות, ואצל כל פינת תערוב. And she is like trying to hunt him, this little boy who is חסר לב, which is very much Potiphar's wife according to our sages, and we will see that in a minute. והחזיקה בו ונשקה לו, העזה פניה ותאמר לו. And she basically tried to get a hold on him. She's trying to force him into something that he does not want. So the description that King Solomon is delineating to us, the Midrash picks on it, and the Midrash says the following. והנה אישה לקראתו, there is a woman who comes towards him, זו אשתו של פוטיפר. This is Potiphar's wife. So in a way, King Solomon, in Proverbs, hundreds of years after Yosef, he's describing the trial that Yosef had to go through. ונצורת לב לבעלה. She is basically, and look what the Midrash does, it's brilliant. Yosef is חסר לב. Yosef is heartless because of what he did. She, Potiphar's wife, she's what? נצורת לב. What is נצור? נצור is locked. Her heart is locked, is closed towards her husband, but it's open towards Yosef, who is חסר לב. She thinks that because Yosef is heartless, she can basically attract him to her. הומייה היא וסוררת. What does it mean, הומייה היא? Says the Midrash, בייחיה היא ותעיה. She's crying, she's begging Yosef, please be with me. בביתה לא ישכנו רגליה, אלא פעם בחוץ, פעם ברחובות, שואלת חמיתון לי יוסף? She's asking everyone, where is Yosef? I want to be with him, I want to talk to him, I want to see him. She is obsessed with Yosef. והחזיקה בו ונשקה לו, ותתפסהו בבגדו. So she gets a hold on him. That's exactly what the Torah says, that she basically grabbed his garments. העזה פניה, she dared to basically request, שכבה עמי, be with me, ויהי אחר הדברים האלה. The Midrash, I think, gave us more details that we wanted to know. We asked, what do you mean אחר הדברים האלה? Oh, the Midrash has a tremendous story to tell you. It all began with what? With lack of unity. It all began with Yosef bad-mouthing his siblings. And you know what? I will add something to the Midrash. And not being reprimanded and rebuked by his father. There is somewhat of a criticism on Yaakov. You hear your son telling you about his siblings and how bad they are, you should call him and say, Yosef, that's enough. Thank you. Let me deal with it. I don't need you to tell on your siblings. But Yaakov didn't do it, and Yosef continued to do it, and maybe Yosef thought that he's doing that to help his brothers, to correct their ways. Or maybe he thought that this is the way that he can build himself and be the chosen son, and they will be rejected. Whatever the reason is, it does not justify to badmouth your siblings. You become heartless. You become someone who is totally lost his sensitivity towards other people, especially your own flesh and blood, your own brothers. So it began there. But it didn't stop there. אחר הדברים האלה, after these things, meaning when Potiphar's wife basically requested, demanded Yosef to be with her, came after a time, I don't know how long, But it came after, I guess, weeks and weeks of trying to convince Yosef to be with her and trying to maybe show favoritism to him, maybe buying him gifts, trying to get a hold on him, trying to be with him, talk to him. Yosef, and now take a look how this midrash creates the drama. Yosef was sold to Egypt. He is heartless towards his siblings. He did not feel loved for a while. He is all alone in Egypt. And then there is Potiphar's wife, your boss's wife, who is trying to basically create this temptation and love and affection. And Yosef needs to face this situation. What would he do? How could he confront such temptation? This is going to be our next topic. Let's go to verse 5, to source 5, verse Chet, chapter 39, verse 8. Vayema'en. Yosef mi'en, which means he refused. As a side note, look at the trump, at the ta'am on above the word Vayema'en. It's called shalshelet. It's very rare in the Torah, and it's a very long trump. I would even say it for a second, Vayema'en, which is a long trump. Chazal, our sages, basically tell us, first and foremost, Yosef stood up very strong, and he says, look, I refuse. I am not going to be with you. Even if I have no excuses to that, I'm just not going to be with you. And also, if you see on your screen, it says Vayema'en, and there is a little line, basically pause. First and foremost, Yosef says, no way, I'm not going to do it. And now, the explanation. Vayomer, and he says, El Eshet Adonav, he says to Potiphar's wife, can you imagine how courageous Yosef had to be? All the temptations, all the gifts, all the environment that she is pushing and pushing him towards her. And now she's facing him, and he says to her, En Hadoni lo yada iti ma babait. My master did not know what's going on in this house. V'chol asher yesh lo natan beyadi. And everything he has, he gave to me. Basically, I'm the trustee of the house. How can I what? How can I betray his faith in me? So, when you look at this pasuk, when you look at this verse, you say, basically, Yosef told her, look, I'm sorry, you just picked on the wrong guy. I am trustworthy. I gave my word to my master. He gave me the keys. He knows I can come and go as I wish. He knows you are here in the house. He trusts me. He basically gave me the keys. He knows I will not do such a thing. However, when you look at it, there is an expression in this verse which is a bit odd and rare in the Torah. Hen Adoni. The word Hen Adoni is a bit strange and rare. And I would like to show you, if you look, for example, I will look at that in a minute, we will see that in source 7, we will deal with the word Hen Adoni, but not yet. I would like to call your attention to source number 6. Source number 6 comes from the book which is called Sefer Tzava'at HaShvatim. Sefer Tzava'at HaShvatim is what we call in our tradition Sfarim Chitzoniyim, which means they didn't make it to the Tanakh, to the 24 books of the Bible. They were written by different people. Some of them were written by Jews, some of them were written by Greeks. And Sefer Tzava'at HaShvatim, it's all in the time of the Beit HaMikdash HaShani of the Second Temple. But in Sefer Tzava'at HaShvatim, basically what is a tzava'ah? A wheel. It basically describes the wheels that each tribe wrote each head of tribe, Yosef, Reuven, Shimon, each one of them describe their lives, and they basically try to convey lessons and messages to their descendants. So in Sefer Tzavaat HaShvatim, there is a beautiful description of the back and forth between Potiphar's wife and Yosef. Let's take a look. וכאשר לא יכלה דבר, ותבוא אליי בעורמה לקחת לקח לשמוע את דבר אלוקים. This is amazing. Again, I don't know how much validity to give to this source, but it's there. And it's similar, not exactly, but like a midrash, try to fill up the gaps. So take a look. Yosef now is basically telling his descendants about his trials in Egypt, especially with Potiphar's wife, and he's telling them the details. So he says to them, when Potiphar's wife saw that I'm not interested because Vayema'en, I refused to talk to her, she came and she manipulated me, be'orma. And she said, you know what, Yosef? We're not going to be intimate. You know what? We're not going to have any relationship. I just want to hear from you a dvar Torah, a shiur, a lesson. Let's learn Torah together. Lishmoa et dvar Elokim. Let's learn. Let's see what God is telling you. Vatomer elai. And she says to me, says Joseph to his children, אם חפץ אתה כי אעזוב את האלילים, שכבה עמי, ואנוכי אפתה את בעלי לסור מאחרי האלילים ונלך בחוקות השם אלוקיך. This is incredible. Joseph says to his children, she, Potiphar's wife, came to me and she said, look, do you want me to convert to be a monotheist? I will do it. One condition. Sleep with me, and I will convert to monotheism, and I will convert my husband. Look, Yosef, just one time with me, and you converted a family. This is their religious aspect. Like Yosef, do it for your God. You see the temptation here? You see the manipulation? ואומר אליה, so Yosef says, no, אין חפץ להשם בטומאת יראיו, ולא ירצה בנואפים, כי אם באלה אשר בתואר לבב ובניקיון שפתיים יקרבון אליו, ותחרש כי ביקשה למלא תאוותה. So Yosef says to her, look, that's not going to work like that. God will not be happy that you convert to monotheism and you will convert your husband to monotheism, but the price is sleeping with me. This is just, as we say in Yiddish, it's pasnisht. It's just inappropriate. You can't do those things. If you want to recognize God, go ahead, I'll help you. But it's not going to be through relationships between us. וארבה לצום ולהתפלל למען יצילני השם מידה. So Yosef says, I start to continue to pray and to fast, so God will help me not to fall into the trap that she is trying to prepare for me. ותוסף לעת אחרת ותאמר אליי, אם לא תחפוץ לזנות עמי, אנוכי אהרוג את בעלי ואקחך לי לבעל. This is unbelievable. Our sages are not that detailed, but this Sefer Tzavaat HaShvatim that I found is an incredible story. A week after, Potiphar's wife goes to Yosef and she says, you know what? I'm really in love with you. I will murder my husband and I will marry you. So if you don't want to have intimate relationship with me because I have a husband, that's easy. I'll get rid of my husband and I'll take you as my husband. Not a problem. ותאנח מר ותיפל למשכב והיא לא חלתה. So what does she do? She pretends to be sick, and she's not. וכראות בעלה אותה, ויאמר לה, למה נפלו פנייך? ותאמר לו, צרה בלבבי וכל הנחות רוחי הציקוני, וירפא אותה והיא לא חלתה. So she pretends to be sick, and Potiphar is trying to help her to find remedy for her sickness, for her illness, and then she's getting better. ויהי לעת מצוא, רצה אליי, ובעלה היה מחוץ לבית, ותאמר אליי. So she was waiting for her husband to leave the house, and now she's all Well, she runs to Yosef and she says to me, Echanek or etnapel elbo, which means I will fall into a pit, im lo tachpotz tishkav imi. She basically says, I'm going to choke myself, I'm going to die if you're not going to sleep with me. ובראותי כרוח בליעה לרגיזה, ואתפלל אל השם ואומר אליה. And it's a long story, but when Yosef saw that she lost her mind, he continued to pray to Hashem that Hashem will take care of her. Let's pause here, because it's a lot. In Sefer Tzavaat HaShvatim, in this book, what we call Sefer Chitzoni, an external book to Tanakh, there is a description of many events that took place before what I will call the moment when Potiphar's wife basically says to Yosef, you are going to be with me right now. She tried to manipulate Yosef religiously. Then she offered to murder her own husband. And then she said, I will kill myself if you're not going to be with me. Yosef at that time is 17 years old. A very handsome young man, talented, a person that, everyone would like to have him as a shidduch to their daughter. And Potiphar's wife is obsessive with him. She manipulates him. She tried to force him into something that he does not want. And he is able to vayema'en, to refuse, and to say, En Adoni lo yada iti ma babayit. My master has no clue what's flying in this house. I cannot betray his trust. How can he do it? So let's pause here for just a second and let's sum up what we saw. We asked the question of what does it mean, Vayi achar advarim haele? What does it mean after these things? And we have now a list of things. Yosef is heartless. He's bad-mouthing his siblings. Second is we have all this story about Potiphar's wife's temptation, religiously, murdering her husband, or she wants to murder her husband. She is willing to kill herself. She is saying to Yosef, look, we can do it. And Yosef needs to stand courageously and say no. Now, you already see, and you can already sense, something interesting, that it's basically is beneath the lines. Yosef is portrayed at the beginning as a chasar lev, heartless. And now, he has a heart of gold. He is sensitive. He understands that this is not the right thing. He's not interested in betray someone's trust. Now, it seems to be that Yosef is going through some kind of a transformation that will lead him to triumph. What is exactly this transformation? So take a look at source 7. This expression that I shared with you that is very rare in Tanakh is the word hen Adoni. Hen, it's very hard to find an English translation. Hen Adoni is yet my master, something like that. It's not an accurate translation, but in Hebrew it's hen Adoni. Before we see the Midrash, I want to show you, for example, in Bereshit Perek Gimel Pasuk Kav Bet, that's in the time of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden. It says, Vayomer Hashem Elokim, and Hashem says, En Ahadam. You see the word hen, it's the fourth word, hen, hey nun. Hen Ahadam haya ke'achad mimenu. Again, yet man was like us. What does that mean? And if you look at the Midrash here on source 7, let's see how the Midrash understands it. Hen Adoni. Amar la, Yosef said to Potiphar's wife, Mityareani. you know what, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm afraid. Why am I afraid? ומה האדם הראשון על מצווה קלה נצטווה ועבר ונטרד מגן עדן, זו שהיא עבירה חמורה, גילוי עריות, על אחת כמה וכמה. So, Yosef says to her, look, he used the expression hen Adoni in order to create this link between hen that he mentions to source number 8 that I showed you before, Vayomer Hashem Elokim en ha'adam, which means when Hashem decided to expel Adam HaRishon from Gan Eden, he used the expression hen. Says Yosef, I'm afraid, I'm terrified. Why am I terrified? Because look, Adam and Eve were commanded in something which was very simple commandment. Do not eat from this tree. You can eat from any other tree. This tree, don't eat. And they ate, and look, what was the punishment? Terrible. Expulsion from Gan Eden, the decree of death, the decree of toiling the land. Women will go through a pain of labor pains. And look what happened when they violated one little mitzvah. And you expect me to violate such a commandment of being intimate with, you are married, I can't be with you. So, hen Adoni. So, if we pause here for a second, and I would ask, okay, so what was the reason for Yosef to be able to stand up courageously and say, I'm not going to be with you? So I would say, fear from punishment, which obviously it's understood, but basically Yosef says to her, I don't want to take the risk. I'm afraid of the punishment, and therefore I'm not willing to be with you. So that's one aspect of his ability to transform himself, because when he was younger, he didn't care about bad-mouthing his siblings. Mitzvah, lo mitzvah, if it's a mitzvah, not a mitzvah, he didn't care so much. Here he says, I'm not willing to do it. So that's one aspect of the transformation that Yosef is going through. But this is just really the basics. Let's build up another floor, another understanding, another insight. Hen Adoni, who is my master, מתיירא אני מאבא שבארץ כנען. I'm afraid, I'm concerned, I'm fearful of my father who is in the land of Canaan. Why? How would Yaakov know that Yosef is sleeping with Potiphar's wife? Says the Midrash, ראובן על ידי שכתוב בו וילך ראובן וישכב את בלעה נתלה בכורתו וניתנה לי, אשמע לך ואדחה מבכורתי. Yosef says to her, and this is an unbelievable insight in Yosef's psyche. Yosef says to her, I have a brother, my oldest brother, his name is Reuven. He also did something inappropriate with my mother's maidservant, Bil'ah. And he lost his right to be a firstborn. The right to be a firstborn was given to me, Yosef. You think I'm going to risk this spiritual accomplishment of having the first right to be the firstborn for one moment of some kind of pleasure? You are totally mistaken. You think I lost sight from spiritual accomplishments? For what? In order to be with you? Says Yosef, and this is an incredible thing, I would say, even for parents. Yosef not only understands that he is the firstborn, or is considered as the firstborn, he is not willing to give it up for anything, but he also knows that what? That Yaakov in land of Canaan, he still inspired Yosef in Egypt, alone. Yosef still knows what is his goal in life. He still lived by his dreams, to be someone who will help the entire family and will change the world. Yosef, at the age of 17, knows exactly what does he need to accomplish and what is expected of him. So, Hen Adoni, my master, is not Potiphar. It's my master, my father, Yaakov, in the land of Canaan. דבר אחר, additional interpretation, says the Midrash, אין אדוני מתיירא אני מאדוני. Says, no, my master means Potiphar. I am afraid of Potiphar. If Potiphar would hear that I stepped with you, he's going to be, I would say, upset with both of us. אמרה לו, so she says to him, הורגתו אני, I'll kill him. Which, pause for a second, if you remember what we read from Sefer Tzavaat HaShvatim, from the book of the wheels of the tribes, there it said that Potiphar's wife suggested to murder her husband. I'm not going to elaborate on it, but I will just say one thing. It's very interesting sometimes to see if ideas or elements from Sfarim Chitzoniyim, from books that are outside of Tanakh, made their ways, meaning made the way in terms of the ideas to our sages later on. And here you see it clearly, for example, Amra lo horakto ani, I'll murder him, which is mamash, it's exactly like what it says in Sefer Tzavaat HaShvatim. אמר לה, לא דיי שאמנה בעשרתין של נואפים, אלא בעשרתין של רצחנים? So Yosef says to her, do you hear what you suggest? You basically says that I will be the reason that you murder your husband, and then I will sleep with you. I mean, הרצחת גם ירשת? What, I'm going to murder the guy and then I'm going to sleep with his wife? I'm not that immoral. You can be that immoral and unethical. I'm not doing that. ואם הדבר הזה את מבקשת, הן אדוני הידי לדקמך, פירוש לכי למותר לך דהיינו בעלך. אמר רב יצחק, חלב עיזים שחורות וחלב עיזים לבנות חדו. Basically, Yosef says to her, if that's what you want, you just want to be with someone, go to your husband. What do you want from me? Basically, Yosef is telling her, you have a husband. Leave me alone. דבר אחר. Another interpretation. By the way, again, as you see, the Midrash is basically structured in multi-layers explanations, which means the word, the expression, hen adoni, because it's so rare, it obviously ignited this spark of interpretations, because everyone is trying to figure out, what does it mean? דבר אחר, another explanation, en adoni, who is en adoni, who is this master? מתיירא אני מהשם. I'm afraid from God. God himself is going to punish me. If I'm going to be with you, this is not good in Hashem's eyes. אמרה לו, so Potiphar's wife responded to Yosef saying, איננו, he's not here. What are you talking about? What God are you talking about? When was the last time he came here? He's not here. אמר לה, גדול השם ומהולל מאוד. No, Hashem is great. He is praised by everyone. He's everywhere. אמר רבי אבין, so says רבי אבין, הכניסה אותו מחדר לחדר ומכיתון לכיתון. So she thought that she can hide from God. So what does she do? She take Yosef from one room to another, from one cave to another, from one tunnel to another, and she's basically putting him in a place that no one can see. עד שהעמידה אותו על מיטתה, she basically placed Yosef on her bed, והייתה עבודת כוכבים שלה חקוקה למעלה ממנה, and her idol, her God, was on her bed, נטלה סדין וכיסתה פניה. She took a little blanket, she put it on her idol, and that's it. אמרה לה, יאות הדין, אפקסי. She says to him, no one can see us. Even my God cannot see us because he has a blanket on him. Your God cannot see you either. אמר לה יאות הדין הפקסי, מי שכתוב בו, עיני השם הם המשוטטים בכל הארץ, על אחת כמה וכמה. Yosef says to her, you are so wrong. My God is not your God. My God can see everywhere, anywhere. Even if you throw a blanket, he's going to see through. Your God is somewhat limited, or very much limited. My God is unlimited. This stage in the Midrash brings the confrontation between Yosef and Potiphar's wife to, I will call it, the religious realm, about faith in God. It might be, by the way, also, and maybe they alludes to Christianity and Judaism, or any other religion that thinks about images. Yosef says to Potiphar's wife, my God is not like your God. My God sees everything. I cannot hide from him. Adam and Eve tried once, didn't work well. You can't hide from Hashem. Hashem is part of our lives. And therefore, says Yosef, וחטאתי להשם אין כתיב כאן אלא לאלוקים איני עושה את הדבר הרע הזה. Says Yosef to her, I don't care if you don't see him, I see him, I feel him, I sense him. Can you imagine Yosef is in a room behind a room, another room, and he says to her, and he is all alone in Egypt, being sold by his brothers, was sent by his father Yaakov to this terrible environment of his brothers, being sold to Egypt. He's now getting almost a ticket out of his misery, and he still says to Potiphar's wife, God is watching. I believe in providence. I believe that I can change because God is watching. I think this is an incredible midrash. It's a multi-layer midrash that basically tried to explain to us how come that Yosef, 17-year-old, handsome young man, talented, dreamer, someone who has vision, can stand and confront one of the most powerful ladies in Egypt. It's the sense of fear from punishment. It's a sense of true, intrinsic education from his father, knowing exactly what is my goal, what is my spiritual accomplishments, what do I need to continue to accomplish. There is just basic morality. I'm not going to do it to my master here. I can't betray his trust. And the last one is providence, is hashgacha, where Yosef says to her, you do not understand God. You cannot separate anything that you do from God. God can see everything. You can throw a blanket, it's not going to help. So now, if we go to source number 9, you see that Yosef says to her in the verse itself, Einenu gadol b'bayit hazeh mimeni. He says to Potiphar's wife, your husband, my master, is not greater than me. He's not more important than me in this house. V'lo chasach mimeni meuma. And he didn't prevent me from anything. Ki imotach ba'asher at ishto. But rather you, because you are his wife. Ve'ech e'aseh hara'a הגדולה הזאת. How can I do this tremendous evil? V'chatati le'elokim. And I will commit a sin. I will create a transgression in front of God. Yosef used the word God, Elokim, and not Hashem, not Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Because Elokim is more a reference to the God of nature, which the Egyptians, even the Egyptians, realize that there is someone that belongs to nature. And Yosef is trying to tell her, even on that level, I can't do this great sin, but she does not listen. So now, let's go back to this Na'ar Chasar Lev, to this young man who the Midrash delineates and describes that he is heartless. Now we see that Yosef built himself a heart filled with morality, sensitivity, fear from God, knowing his spiritual goals. And in the next Parshiot, you will see how Yosef is becoming someone who is very sensitive. As obviously it comes to realization when Benjamin comes along to Egypt in Parashat at the end of Miketz and in Vayigash, Yosef is the one that just cannot hold on anymore. לא יכול יוסף להתאפק. Yosef could not hold himself anymore. His heart was bleeding from love and compassion towards his siblings. The same siblings that he badmouthed them, he realized this is his family. This is the people he wants to be with. This is Yosef. From trial, temptation, through a transformation to a tremendous triumph. Thank you.